Hey guys, Teresa here. Welcome back to my channel, Lost My Thread. It has been a long time since I've made a video and I'm looking forward to catching up with all of you, sharing what I've been sewing, knitting, crafting, and generally where I've been. I am very happy to be back after a long and unexpected absence. I have been having some health issues, unfortunately, which I am now coming around to the other end of, which is very good news, which is why I am back, but it is also why I'm in a bit of a different location. I realized that the color of my shirt is blending in a little bit too much with my couch, but hey, what can you do? I'm sure you guys can see me. I don't think there's a whole like camouflage situation going on, but I am really excited to catch up with you guys. I feel like in ways, life has been kind of at a standstill, but in other ways, there's been quite a lot going on. I've been spending the last couple of months pretty much just here at home with my husband. There has definitely been some crafting going on. I managed to get quite a lot of sewing done in early September before I had my health problems, and there's been just a little bit here and there since then, but I've also been able to get really into my knitting, so I've got some knitting updates. I'll be starting with what I've been doing sewing wise, then knitting stuff, then other craft stuff, and then just a bit of a general life update later. I will be putting chapters down below if you're not interested in certain bits and you want to skip around. I'm going to start with my most summery feeling make, and I did make this when the weather was still warm, but unfortunately I did not get an opportunity to wear it. I think it's going to just get packed away until the warm seasons come back again next year, which is fine. And that is this top. So this is the Selwyn top by Cashmerette. This is from the Cashmerette Club, and if you do want it now, it's an older pattern. You'd have to be like an all access member to be able to access it. I have had this top in my brain wanting to get made for such a long time. I had intended to sew the whole shirt by hand, and I do have still what I had started, and I feel like now that I've finished this, I can officially say goodbye to my like semi-completed hand-sewn version of this top. Just for anybody who's not familiar, if you are following me or you've been following me for a while, you'll probably be familiar with this. But this is the hand-sewn version that I'd done, and I honestly think it was truly beautiful. The whole thing was sewn with French seams all the way throughout, all again by hand. I did the pin tucks by hand. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to work on that because I have been having a lot of problems with my hand and my wrist that I can't hand sew very much. And then also my size changed, so that one no longer fits me. And I came to the conclusion that I had enough of this fabric left over that I could just make the actual top on a sewing machine and get it out of my mind and be happy that I finally made it. And I am really happy that I finally made it. The fabric that I used is a Liberty fabric. It's in really bright primary colors. I don't think they're particularly my colors, but they make me happy. I think the flowers are really beautiful. I do think overall it's a really nice print, and it did definitely make me want to make a nice, really pretty blouse with it. I think in many ways you kind of lose the details because the fabric is so busy, but I do still think it looks really beautiful. So as I mentioned, it has princess seams. I didn't mention the princess seams, but it also has pin tucks going down the front. I think it's a really lovely detail. Now there is this like flutter gathering thing that goes from the front of the princess seam round to the back and over the shoulder, creating a bit of a flutter sleeve effect. Now, I ended up making this slightly shorter than it was intended to be just because I didn't have quite enough fabric, and I'm glad that I did that. I do feel like already, depending on the angle, depending on how the fabric's behaving with a breeze and things, it can look a little bit slightly silly and like, I don't know, like an alien costume or something if it's really sticking out. It doesn't tend to. It's a Liberty tunnel lawn, so it does have nice drape to it, but I feel like it doesn't particularly fall over the shoulder in the way that I had hoped that it would. I think in like a lighter weight viscose type fabric, it would probably be perfect for that, and you get a nice little kind of flutter over the shoulder. I do still think it is really pretty, and I do think the details on this are really what make it. I think the fit is fantastic. I was really impressed with the fit. I didn't make a muslin on this one, which was interesting. I don't really know why. I did do a based fit just to check that it was okay, and it was like literally spot on, so I just didn't need to change anything. There is a Mandarin style collar on this. I had some really pretty blue buttons that I feel like really pop nicely against the fabric. I think they're a bit understated. I didn't want them to be too bold because the fabric is bold. I think it was a good pairing. I definitely feel like this one is going to be an absolute go-to, particularly for workwear in the spring and in the summer, well, anytime the weather is warm. But like I said, the weight of this fabric, the fact that it's even a bit more difficult to like layer up because of the little sleeve thing, I feel like this is less likely to get worn in the colder months. But it is really beautiful, and I had been really wanting to make more things from the Cashmerette Club, so I'm happy that I finally did. The one thing I will say about this project that was really funny to me, not funny, but like it was unexpected, was that I had a surprisingly emotional time sewing this top up. Because I'd had the idea of sewing it up by hand, and then my hand stopped me, my health issues stopped me from being able to do that, it felt really sad and I don't know, just a bit disappointing to sew it on the machine. I feel like it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to like resign ourselves to the reality of our health and where we are, especially if it's limiting us from doing things that we want to do. And sewing for me is such an important part of who I am. It's a way that I express myself. It's a way that I feel like I'm in myself in a way. It's been with me since I've been 16, so it made me sad that I had to compromise on that. But obviously, I got a beautiful top in the end, and that's the bottom line. How I put it together isn't really as important, but it was just interesting for me to notice that, and I definitely had a bit of a tougher time sewing this blouse together, but it is really pretty, and I'm so glad I have it. The next one I'm going to share is one that I had actually mostly completed in April, but only just got around to finishing in September. And I'm not somebody who usually has a lot of like UFOs, whips, like partially completed projects lying around. I tend to batch things together, so I might do like a batch cutting session, but then I do tend to work on a project and finish a project before I work on the next one. And this is an example of a time that I did not do that. And that is just because I had started it and nearly finished, but then I had other priorities. So I knew I was going to be flying to the States, so I had something I wanted to make my mom. There were clothes that I wanted to make to have on the trip and summery things that I felt like needed to happen in the summer. So this one ended up just kind of sitting on the sidelines, and it was a nice, satisfying one to be able to just whip up with very little effort, honestly, because I gotten so much of it done already. It is this shirt, which is the Cameron button-up by Helen's Closet. Now, I'm hoping you can see what drew me to this fabric. I picked this up at the Stitch Festival earlier this year, and it's a 100% linen. It's quite a lightweight linen. The drape of it, the movement of it is just honestly breathtaking. Like, I was mesmerized watching them unroll it and cut my fabric for me. It's a beautiful color, and there's something about it that just like, it almost shines when the light hits it. And so it does look different where there's light and shade. I felt like it was going to be such a great button-up option, and I ended up getting leftover fabric. I had quite a lot left over that I was actually able to make a pair of shorts as well. So I've already talked about these shorts before in detail. I'll put a link down below to that video if you want to know more about it, but these are the Friday Pattern Company sport shorts. I did not love sewing these up. I do not love the outcome, but I do love the two together, which is what I was hoping. I particularly don't like the fit generally across the waist, but that gets covered up when I'm wearing the shirt, so that's fine. I've had the seam here, so there is a binding, bias binding going around the edge. I've had that unravel, I think maybe 4 times, 5 times at this point at different sections because it's not constructed in a way that I think is very sturdy. And I did end up doing another repair so that I could have it to wear with the shirt. And again, that took like, probably 5 minutes. I'm glad that I did though, because like I said, I think they look phenomenal together. They're such a cute combo. Now, obviously, I can wear the shirt in a whole lot of other ways. I like the idea of being able to wear it just as a layer over the top unbuttoned. I'll see and play around with whether I feel like it works to kind of tie it at the waist as well, but it might be just a little bit too long and bulky. But I think one way or another, This kind of linen shirt is just such a great wardrobe staple, and it's something that I've really been wanting. One of my good sewing friends, Izzy, made a Cameron linen button up, and I was obsessed and knew that I needed to have one. So I'm so glad to have this in my wardrobe now. Now this is the second Cameron button up that I've made. The first one I felt was just generally oversized in odd ways, like proportionately wasn't working for me. And so I made quite a few adjustments for this version. So I ended up sizing down 2 sizes in like the upper bust area, and then I graded out to just 1 size down at the hip area, which to me was the right amount of oversize. The sleeves also are sized down 2 sizes. I ended up shortening the sleeves quite significantly as well. A full 2 inches I took from the sleeve. I do find Helen's Closet patterns, the sleeves do tend to be super long for my arms. But I think probably in the future I would go with just like a 1 inch shortened on the sleeves, just because I do quite like having a little bit of extra length, just if like when I'm bending my arms and things, that it's not pulling up a bit. I don't think it's a problem with the shirt. I think the shirt is beautiful as it is, but just for other things in the future, that's probably something I would play with. I like the Cameron for being like a just totally straightforward button-up shirt. It does not have any bust shaping. It does not have any like fussy extra details on it. It's just like a great classic button up. I generally really love the way the cuff and the sleeve placket comes together. There are some really lovely pleats on the sleeve, which I think look really nice. I feel like the overall silhouette, like I said, it's just such a great classic, and I'm looking forward to styling this in all different ways. I do think it is a total win. There is a single chest pocket on this, which I think is a nice detail. There is an enclosed back yoke, so it's sewn with the burrito method, which makes a really nice, neat finish on the inside. There's an inverted box pleat under the yoke at the back as well, which I feel like makes a really nice movement and shape, but also just has that like classic shirt style. The buttons came from Textile Garden. I think all of the buttons of the things I made in September are from Textile Garden. It's where I tend to buy my buttons. I really do love it. Best place to buy buttons in the UK, in my opinion, to get really just nice, interesting, but also fairly simple buttons. You can get more kind of impressive, fancy, colorful ones elsewhere, but if you just want like a straight ahead button, that's where I would definitely recommend. I think these ones were actually ones that I bought that I was considering for the Selwyn top. When I'm buying buttons from there, because they're really not expensive, I will usually buy like a variety of different ones if I'm not quite sure what's going to be the best color match, and then I can have the other ones left over for other projects. I think that's what these ones came from. I think it is such a perfect button, just nicely, like I said, understated, not anything too in your face, just a really nice, neat, classic shirt. The construction and instructions, as always with Helen's Closet, were absolutely spot on. This is definitely my favorite method of constructing a shirt, and it's one that I will go back to in the future for linen shirts, absolutely. And when I finished that shirt up, I felt very excited and inspired to make another button-up shirt that has been on my mind that I've been wanting to make, and it is this birdie button-up by Pattern Scout. I really love how this turned out. This is my second time making the birdie button up, but the first time I'd actually cropped the body a little bit. I felt like it was maybe going to be a bit long for me. Turns out I want it as designed. I didn't need to crop it. I made this really just as recommended. I feel like the sizing is fantastic. This is a more fitted shirt. So it has bust darts and it has some shaping at the waist. I like these two for different reasons, for different things. I feel like this one has a little bit more just like a feminine style to it, which I like, and I feel like it suited the fabric. So this fabric came from the Sister Mintaka stall at the Stitch Festival. I bought it the same day I bought that blue linen, and I was immediately drawn to these colors. I feel like in my mind, I often associate Liberty fabrics with like pastel-y florals, quite ditzy prints, and this fabric was just so stunning. I thought it would be really a perfect blouse, perfect shirt, and I immediately thought of the birdie button up because I've been wanting to make another one since I made my first version. So this shirt has quite a deep cuff, and it's meant to have 2 buttons at the cuffs. My first version, I followed that, but I do feel like it's a little bit fussy because it is a fairly narrow cuff, and I sometimes have to undo the buttons to get my hands in and out, and having 2 buttons is just a bit of a pain. And I do think probably it looks like it's maybe a little bit long for a single button, but I think it's fine. I think unless I said something you wouldn't have known. I do feel like the shape and the fit are overall really fantastic. However, I did make a mistake when I was cutting this out. There is a line on the back pattern piece where the pleat is meant to be, because there's two views of this pattern. There's the same pattern pieces for both views, but there's like different marking lines for the two different ones. And I thought that I was supposed to line up the sort of the back of the shirt with where the pleat is meant to finish. So essentially this is a bit narrower than it's meant to be from the back section. I particularly notice with the upper back, so if I like bring my arms forward, it's definitely tighter than it should be. There's meant to be a pleat there so that I've got more room and ease to move around. Fortunately, it's not too tight at the hip. It very well could have been because the whole thing is narrower. I'm gonna guess maybe like 2.5 inches narrower than it's meant to be, which is significant. So I'm relieved that it still fits me. I did do a smaller seam allowance, which obviously would have helped me a little bit. So I do think that I probably salvaged it by doing that once I'd realized the mistake that I made. The only thing I will say with this one, as far as the construction, I don't love it as much as I do the Cameron. And there is a YouTube sew along for the shirt that Pattern Scout has put up recently. And I watched the video where they were making the collar, and it's quite a different collar construction to the original instructions. And the collar construction in the video is much closer to the Cameron, which is much more how I would prefer to construct it. And so I feel like I probably would just make it the way the Cameron is made in the future, which is again how the video is. And the placket as well, I feel like didn't turn out quite as neatly as the Cameron placket. I could totally see doing a mashup of these two patterns if I want to have more of like a fitted Cameron essentially. But I do think this is really beautiful overall. I do think it's something that I will really love wearing. It's the kind of shirt that was very much in my like mood board vision of things that I wanted for my wardrobe. It was a big gap in my wardrobe, and I'm looking forward to wearing this with different things. I particularly think this will be really pretty under the Burnside bibs. I like the idea of having like a floral feminine shirt over a more sort of semi like workwear kind of feel. I think they contrast really nicely together, but yeah, it's a beautiful shirt and I would definitely recommend the pattern. I have one more project that I started and finished in September, and it is this dress. This is the March dress by Helen's Closet. This is the Apron style dress hack from her blog, which I'll put a link to down below if you're not familiar with it. I really love this dress. It has a really pretty princess seam yoke section at the front and the back. There are ties at the neckline, which I'd like to have on there, even though I don't tie them, because I feel like they help to kind of open the neckline up. There is gathering on the skirt section, which I don't think is particularly visible on the photos because of course I've got the ties going around, and that is the thing that makes this different from the standard version. The side seam is completely open. You finish the edge of the side seam with bias binding, so I made some matching bias binding, and you add ties at the front and the back on each side. And then the idea is that you take the front section, tie it around your body, tie it at the back, and then you take the side ties from the back and tie it around the front. And that's how you get in and out of the dress. It's a little bit hard to explain. Hopefully you can visualize it, but it's definitely nice. I really like that it's quite adaptable and adjustable, particularly because this fabric is so lovely and lightweight and perfect for summer, that I like that I have the option of making it a little bit looser if I don't want it as tight. This fabric is an Indian block print fabric from Merchant & Mills. I picked it up from Merchant & Mills last year with this plan in mind because I'd seen this hack and I thought, ooh, I bet that would be great in an Indian block print. I wasn't wrong. I'm definitely happy that I made it. I made this whole thing with French seams as well. There were really not a lot of seams, and so I felt like, what is the point? I might as well just make it as beautiful on the inside as the outside because I'm doing all this bias binding. Let's just go to the extra level and do it all in French seams, which is always a really nice treat for yourself when you're wearing a garment, when you're looking at it. This dress I feel like is really beautiful. I feel like the color is great for me. It feels really lovely and light, although it is a little bit longer. So that's the other thing, is I did lengthen the skirt by 4 inches, which I feel like is a good length for me. But the length of it makes it feel like it actually could work well in the fall with some layering as well. The one thing I will say is because you have this crossover section and there's no side seams, there is a lot of potential for things to peek out. So under the arm, I was a little bit worried that my bra might be a bit visible, but she does mention like if you are worried about that, you can add a little like triangle panel section. I feel like that's actually not too bad. Like depending on the bra, you might see a little tiny bit of it there, but I don't think too much, and I'm not gonna let that put me off. But I didn't realize when I was walking out with my husband to get some photos, the whole thing blew up. I think it was the back opened up, and he said he got a full-on view of my underwear. I didn't even feel like my skirt had blown up, and that's probably because this fabric is so lightweight, you kind of don't feel like you're wearing anything. So after that, I was just like super paranoid and just holding the back of the skirt forward as we were going around. It was a windy day. It was a bit of a blustery day, but it definitely does make me feel a little bit nervous about this. If anyone has any ideas of ways that I can make it a little bit secure while still maintaining the ability to like adapt it and make it more adjustable. I don't want to sew that side seam because then it kind of defeats the object, but I also don't want to be flashing people. So suggestions welcome. I do think it's a beautiful dress, but I feel like I'm just stuck with a little bit of a problem with it. Before all of the health stuff started, I went to a sewing social. It was the Hertfordshire Sewing Social in Radlett, and that was where I sewed up my March dress. The majority of my March dress I sewed up there. I was definitely being an iron hog, making so much bias binding. I'm glad that people were not getting fed up with me. This is the second sewing social group that I've been to. I was curious to try different ones just to kind of get a feel of the vibe, the kinds of people, the amount of people, the general setup. It's fun to go to different ones and meet different people, and I did really enjoy this one. It was smaller than the other one that I've gone to before. I went to one in Buckinghamshire, and this one was probably about half the size. I want to say there was about a dozen of us there, and it does seem like it varies a little bit who goes. It's not always terribly consistent, the amount of people that go. But generally, I will say I liked that it was a bit of a smaller group, and the way it was set up is the tables were all kind of in a big circle, so people could all talk kind of to the group rather than just the people that you were kind of next to off in a little corner. And I feel like it made it more social, and people very much were getting up and going around and chatting to people about their projects. I did a little bit of that as well, which was really nice. It was my first time going to that one and meeting a whole load of new people, and as much as I come on here and I talk to all you guys, I'm definitely an introvert, and I am not very like open with just talking to strangers, apart from like work stuff I can handle. But you know, it's not my like total comfort zone, but it was so nice to go, and I have to say it felt just incredibly welcoming, and I would be really interested to go to that one again. I mean, really any sewing social is going to be fun and nice and positive because it's all sewing and everyone talking about sewing and working on their projects. But it was nice to try this other one. Like I said, I am interested in going to that one again. And I was glad that I got that little bonus extra time to sew, or I definitely wouldn't have finished this March dress in September. I did manage to sew up one garment in October, but it was very much a slow and steady process because I wasn't able to sit at my sewing chair for very long periods of time, so I had to do it very like piecemeal, but it still felt really satisfying, and it made a big difference for me to feel like, for one, I was like slowly improving enough to be able to sit at my sewing chair at all, but also number two, I knew that I was doing something for me, and I felt like I was able to be a little bit more myself by being able to do it. So even though it was very slow going, it felt like a big triumph. But I also was just very excited to get this garment sewn up, and it is these Pietra pants by Closet Core Patterns. I think I had this in my autumn sewing plans last year, so it took a minute, but I did get there. This is made in a really lovely Serona viscose linen blend. It's a whole blend. I'll put it up on the screen what it is. It's from Lamazi Fabrics. And as you can probably see, it has really gorgeous drape to it. I would say like a lighter weight, kind of light to medium weight fabric. It's super duper soft. This one has elastic at the back, the Pietras, and it's a flat front with no waistband. It's got these really cool, interesting pockets. I had made the Pietra shorts before, and I really liked those, and I really enjoyed wearing those in the summertime, and I wanted to make the trouser version. There are two views of this pattern. This is the tapered leg version. There's also a wide leg version, and I was interested in making the tapered leg. I felt like that would be less of what I already have in my wardrobe, so it would be a little bit more useful for me. And I didn't do a muslin for this one, and Honestly, largely that was because I had such limited sewing time. I was like, I can't spend time making a muslin. I'm never even gonna be able to make these trousers with how slow my sewing is at the moment. So what I decided to do was to do a based fit of the trousers. So I sewed in the bits that I knew weren't likely to change, and then I did a base fit of the other bits, and it was like perfect, fit like a glove. Closet core trousers are just like my lower half. They are such a good fit for me. I increased the rise by an inch and they're just like golden, and this was very much the same. I am so happy with the fit on these trousers, and like I said, the fabric is so soft. They are incredibly comfortable to wear. I have worn them a little bit here and there since I've made them, and I really do like them. I think they're going to be such a great staple for work. That's my main thing. I think they're going to be fantastic with all types of blouses, tucked in or over the top. I did take some pictures of a blouse that I'd made, both tucked in and untucked, so that you can get a bit of a feel for it. I had to take a picture with this particular blouse. Let me grab it. I'm calling it a blouse because it's floral and it's a viscose fabric, but it is a shirt. This is the Cameron button-up by Helen's Closet. This is the first version I made, and I made the size as recommended, so it is definitely fairly oversized. I've sized down on my next version. But this fabric is so, so gorgeous. Both these fabrics came from Lamazi Fabrics, and they came together. So Lamazi do these fabric packages where you can buy like 2 fabrics that are meant to coordinate well together. And I got these as a gift from my parents. They got me a gift voucher for one of these packages, and I thought it was a really fun combo. And it's nice to know that whatever you're gonna make is definitely gonna work well and coordinate, because it can be so hard when you're buying stuff online. Colors aren't always what you expect them to be, and so it was nice to be able to actually finally sew these trousers up. I made this blouse, I guess it was probably late last year or early this year, so being able to actually wear them together was really fun. The other thing that I was quite excited about with these trousers, well, with the whole thing to be honest, is that I also have made a heather blazer. Yeah, it's the heather blazer by Friday Pattern Company in the very same fabric. I made this one, I want to say like couple of years ago. I'll pop up on the screen when I made it, and I really loved this fabric. And when I was buying my like coordinating package, I saw that it was going to be the same fabric, and I thought, well, wouldn't that be fun? I can make a little like coordinating suit if I wanted to wear it in that way. And so it was really nice to be able to have the whole outfit together. I thought the jacket looked really good with the whole look. I'm probably not going to wear them together very often if I'm honest, but it was nice to have the option of wearing them together. The trousers came together really, really well, as I expected they would. Like I said, I've made the shorts before, and I really enjoy the construction of the pockets. It's quite unusual, but really satisfying when it all comes together. And I would say, on the whole, they were a big success. In addition to the trousers that I made, I did do some other sewing. And one of the things that I made, this is kind of awkward to show you guys, are these inside my boots. I'm calling them boot shapers. I don't know, there's probably another name you can put on them, but basically they are fabric. Let me see if I can like take them out on camera. I can't tell like what's on camera, but I think I'm good. So these are fabric, I don't know, like blocks, there's a square base or rectangular base on the bottom that is filled with cedar chips. So it smells lovely. It smells like cedar. It smells like cedar wood. And there are little tabs that I put on the top. And the idea is that I put them into my knee-high boots to help maintain the shape, because if you have boots, if you've had knee-high boots, you will probably know that when you take your legs out of them, if you just leave them as they are, they flop over. And I wanted to maintain the shape of them. You can buy various like boot shapers. They're usually plastic though. They're usually pretty junky. And I thought it would be nice to make something. So I did look online for a tutorial, and I didn't find anything really quite like what I wanted. So I've decided I'm gonna make a tutorial video of how to make these, just because I think it's really useful, and you make them based on your own boots so that you know they're gonna fit really well. I think that'd also be a good gift. But I used some fun fabric. I should show you guys. So this fabric is an African wax print fabric that I got from the House of Mami Wata. This is a fabric that I really like, but I don't feel like is super wearable in my wardrobe, the colors and kind of the bold color contrast. And so I haven't been using the fabric up. And when I was thinking of making some boot stuffers, boot shapers, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to use this fabric. And then I had this ribbon just in my stash, and I feel like it coordinates quite well with it. Now, I would be curious, if I did make a tutorial, let me know what you think I should call these. Boot shapers, boot stuffers, boot fillers. I don't know. I just want to know what you guys think would be helpful for people to know what they're actually looking at when they look at the thumbnail. But there will be a video coming along of how to make them, and they have been absolutely perfect. I am really happy with how they came out. Like I said, they smell really lovely as well. The cedar apparently is also really good at absorbing odors, which is a nice bonus, but also the smell of the cedar apparently helps to keep bugs away, like spiders and things, which is another bonus. So yeah, those were definitely a nice addition in my household, even if not in my wardrobe. And I have been doing some knitting, and so the other sewing thing that I decided I wanted to make are these two project bags. So the idea of these is that they can be used to store my knitting stuff. And that way it means I can kind of put things in and then move them around. If I want to take projects with me as I'm going out and about, I can put everything in there that I need. I made there's like two views of this. So this one has like a sort of a swirl up and down that goes around. And this one is just like a diagonal that goes all the way around. And I think they both turned out super cute. The idea of this is that you use quilt batting going around the base and then around the sides and on the base, 2 layers of quilt batting, and you can do whatever you want really. So there's 3 designs. This is the Cozy Pouch by Incomplete Stitches, I should have said. There's 3 sizes for this. This is the larger size, which is what she recommends for like a project bag for your knitting. Though equally you could use it for like your sewing stuff if you're going on a sewing social, going to your friend's house sewing, that kind of thing. But I wanted it really for my knitting. And so there are, yeah, 3 different sizes and then 4 designs that are included in it. So there is just like a solid going around. So there's just no separation of color, just like one solid band. You can do this diagonal, which I thought was quite a fun option. I wanted to see how that went. You can see this is where the join is. And then, yeah, this one where it goes like down and then up again, which I thought was really pretty. And then there's also one where you have circles, like circle sections, which I thought was definitely still cool, but I didn't feel like it was going to suit my fabrics as much. I felt like these were the designs that I thought would be perfect. And you can choose to use whatever you want, like how much different contrasting fabrics and things you have. I was largely going with what I had around because both of these are made from completely fabric scraps, which is a delight. Even the quilt batting is leftover quilt batting from a quilt that I made. So it was all using scraps, which is always super cool. I will pop up a picture of the different things that went into this. I thought it'd be quite fun to show you guys what has been sewn up that then created these scraps that I used. But I do just feel like I love these diagonal lines, quilting lines that I put on there, and then the contrast of the vertical quilting lines. I was generally using the recommended way of doing the quilt lines, and I think it did turn out really well. This one I thought would be nicer to keep a little bit more spaced out on this little curve section, you know, than compared to the stripy one. And I feel like they're just so pretty. Oh yeah, pictures of what this is from. Now the fun thing that I like about this in particular is that the section here, this top section, is from the Anthea blouse. This is from a skirt that I made, the estuary skirt by So Liberated, and I can wear the two together and match my little project bag. But then to make it even better, these are fully lined, and the lining that I've got here is my same Serona viscose linen. So I could theoretically wear that skirt with the blouse and my blazer over the top, which is very fun to me. So yeah, the idea is that you line it completely. I'll turn it so that you can see. It's really nicely finished overall. The only thing I will say is I didn't love the way they did the binding, and I ended up unpicking it and redoing it myself just because I didn't feel like it was looking very neat. So the idea of the way they have you put it together is that you sew the binding together on the outside, then you fold it on to the inside and you hand stitch it in place. However, when you have 2 layers of quilt batting and the fabric, and the binding is not that wide, that like big of a fabric, I found it incredibly difficult to even pull it over, let alone hand sew it in place. So I tried doing it on the machine. It turned out like a right old mess. I'll pop in a picture of what they looked like, and decided like I was just not satisfied with how that looked. So I ended up cutting out a wider binding, 2 inches wide. It doesn't need to be bias binding, by the way. They have you cut out bias binding. Though this is round, you are stitching in a straight line going around. It does not need to be on the bias. A straight binding like a quilt binding is absolutely fine and uses so much less scrap fabric. So I wish I'd realized that and kind of thought about it before. But if you do make this, just make binding. 2 inches wide is my recommendation. You do not need to make it on the bias. But I ended up sewing it together on the inside first. So right side to the inside of this section. Then I folded it around, and then I was able to top stitch it from the outside very neatly so I could see exactly what I was stitching. And there's a little bit of thread peeking through on the inside, but nothing that I think is a problem, and certainly looks way neater than the first version did. For this, there is a little toggle closure with a tie. I don't know where this rope came from. I was looking through what I had when I was looking for the ribbon for the boot filler things, and I found this rope and I thought this would actually be really perfect. I do know these toggles. I ended up buying a load of them at one point for another project. It was like a multi-buy situation, so I was quite happy to have them. The other one, so this is the project bag I've actually currently got in use, and inside here I just used like a navy. It was just a nice little coordinating fabric. Another fabric scrap. I'll have to pop in the picture of the shorts that I made with this. But I am, like I said, I am using it. So I have a knitting project inside. It's a really good size where I've got my sweater that I'm knitting, and then I've got 2 balls of yarn inside, and I've got my little scissors, and I've got a crochet hook. Basically the bits that you need for when you're working on a project. And I do like that I can then just take this around with me if I want to, if I want to knit, you know, if I get to work early, if I'm going to a friend's house, that kind of thing. It's not heavy, and it's just very cute. I love the sort of squishy, cozy nature of it. I like that it's called the Cozy Pouch. I feel like that's appropriate. And they have definitely come in handy because, like I said, I've been doing a bit of knitting. So I think I'm going to show you what I've been working on. And the first thing is actually a finished object. I knit myself a hat, which was one of my goals for the year, guys. So I'll grab my 25 for 2025 list and cross it off. But this is the Oslo Hat by Petite Knit. This is actually knit. It's like you do basically like a double brim section or fold over, and you can then fold it back on itself. And it creates 3 layers of warmth over your ears, which I really love. It's not a complicated hat. I didn't want a complicated hat. It's my first hat that I've ever knitted, so I didn't want to do anything too wild. The only thing I will say is it's tighter than I probably would have wanted it. I was hoping for a little bit of a slouchier hat. I mean, I did look at the pictures. I don't know what I was expecting. I think it turned out like it was meant to, but I think I would probably either size up or more likely just go for a different type of hat that's a little bit slouchier. If you have a slouchier hat recommendation, I'd be happy to have it. The main reason is I often have my hair up, and if I have my hair up, say for work, and then I want to stick a hat on, I need space for like a little messy bun in there. So if you have suggestions for patterns like that, let me know down below. This was not a perfect knit. There's definitely one big mistake on it, which to be fair is not even really that easy to show you guys. I'm not a perfectionist with my knitting. I feel like still a bit of a beginner, but there's some funky business there that I couldn't tell you quite what that is. But on the whole, I think it turned out pretty neatly. I did have one point where I was pretty confused with the hat when you get to the point where you're kind of creating a little fold and then bringing it up on itself. There was a video that I found super helpful that I will put a link to down below. And that's the point I wanted to make, is that this is a Petite Knit pattern. First time I've made a pattern by Petite Knit, and I know that they're incredibly popular, and I know they're very popular with beginner knitters in particular, and they're meant to be very easy to follow. I did not find this hat super easy to make. Like I said, there was a whole section where you're basically creating a bit of a fold over where the brim is going to fold up, and I did not understand what the instructions were trying to tell me, and I had to find a video by somebody else who basically explained how this hat comes together and how it works. I feel like I really missed having like the diagrams of a sewing pattern, because knitting patterns are always just written. There are some videos, and Petite Knit does have some videos in Danish, but you can translate them. And I did look at videos, but it didn't have a video for that bit. And it was interesting to me that when I found the video that explained it, and I felt like, okay, now I get this, it's pretty simple. there were so many comments of lots of other people saying that I got really stuck on this section. I didn't understand this. Thank you so much for this video. So I know it's not just me being a beginner, and I feel like I don't really understand why this pattern company is such a popular one for beginners, because I didn't find it that clear. And like I said, the videos that were there were not a video for the tricky bit. So it was a bit of a funny one to me. Maybe it was a bit of a little fluky thing with this particular pattern. I would make it again, but like I said, I'd probably size up if I was gonna make it again. The yarn that I used is this Bellissima double knit style craft. It's an acrylic yarn. It's a DK weight. Now that is the other thing that probably didn't help me, is that this is a DK weight hat, but the idea is that you're meant to hold two fingering weights together to create a DK. And I feel like, knowing a little bit more now, having worked with some different yarns, I think holding two fingering weights double does end up feeling pretty different, and will end up with like a different amount of stretch and fit than just using a straight up DK weight. So that's probably part of it. And if I'm totally wrong, guys, like, correct me, because I'm not an expert knitter by any means. I feel like I'm very much learning as I go. What I will say is this yarn, it worked fine and the hat came together okay. But when I started knitting with other yarns, I kind of feel like I don't want to go back to this acrylic yarn. I didn't love the way it felt in my hands quite so much as I enjoy the feel of the other yarns. So I'm going to have a think about whether I want to keep this and do something else with it, or whether it's time to just say goodbye to these that I haven't used already. So I'm going to just leap on over to my 25 for 2025, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, but it's my 25 things that I've been hoping to do this year. And I'm going to cross off knit a hat, which is exciting. I definitely will make more hats. It's not my last hat, but it was just nice to have finally made one. It's something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. And like I said, I'll be curious to try maybe some other styles, maybe a little bit more of an ambitious style, but is exciting to do it for sure. One of the things that felt like such a big triumph with that hat is that I've been really struggling to do a lot of knitting because of problems I've been having with my hand and my wrist. I have cubital tunnel syndrome and I'm on the waiting list for surgery for that. But since I was off sick from work, I actually noticed a big improvement in my hand and my wrist. I wouldn't say that it's like normal, but it's significantly better than it is when I'm working. And so I was able to knit for longer periods of time, which has been really exciting because I love knitting. I have a lot of knitting ideas. I have a lot of yarn, and it's nice to actually be able to use my time and use my skills to knit some things up. So I have 2 knitting projects on the go at the moment. I feel like kind of a real knitter when I've got 2 projects on the go. I know a lot of knitters often have like a more complicated thing they're working on and a bit of a simpler thing they're working on, depending on, you know, when they're knitting and what else is going on. And I feel like that's very much a useful thing and what I wanted to do as well. I do have one over here. So this is my ambitious knit, absolutely. And it is the Wool and Honey sweater by Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits. I'm not quite sure how you're meant to say the name of the company, but that's it. I'll put it up on the screen. This has a honeycomb pattern, so you get these really beautiful hexagons. I'm going to try and show you guys on here. I think you can see that pretty well. It's top down from the neck, and it is generally knitted in garter stitch, so knit and purl alternate sides. It is knit in the round, so you do have to alternate knit and purl as you're going. I did a swatch knit of this, and I did find when I did the swatch that it was a needle size too big. It was a bit loose, so I ended up having to size down, and I got then an absolutely like perfect swatch. Everything measured really well. It is a super stretchy and also just incredibly soft yarn to work with. Well, the stretchiness, I guess, comes from the knitting pattern. And the yarn I'll put up on the screen because I'm not great with remembering what things are. But this yarn I bought, it's a silk alpaca cashmere blend, and I bought it because the dyer, the person who does the hand dyeing, she said that this for her is her recommended one if you have more sensitive skin, because I have often found I've knitted things up and then they get really scratchy around my neck and they're really uncomfortable. but this yarn is so soft. It is not scratchy, just even in the slightest. It is, she said it's like working with a cloud, which I feel like is pretty appropriate, especially I think with this garter stitch. It's just so soft and squishy and wonderful, and it feels so nice to work with. This is how I was talking about the difference between working with acrylic yarn and working with like a really nice yarn that's got really lovely natural fibers. I've just been enjoying knitting with this one so much. This sweater is very ambitious for me, like extremely ambitious for me, I should say. And it has taken a while. The neckband, I ended up having to unpick. I think it was initially 4 times I unpicked it. And then I was knitting it again, got it right, because it's a bit of a weird cast on and things were throwing me. And then you do some neck increases, like for the back of the neck, like shoulder increases. And as I was doing those, it was definitely, again, a little bit different from things I've done before. I ended up completely messing that up and then realized I can't unpick that without just losing the whole neckband. So I started the whole thing over again. So 5 attempts to get that neckband and then the shoulder included in it. Then I decided to put in a lifeline stitch, which is just a piece of yarn going around that part. In case I screw anything else up, I can at least pull back to the part where it was right. And I'm really glad that I did, because as I was then doing that honeycomb pattern, the hexagon pattern, I thought I was doing it right, and I got to the point where I was ending the hexagons and I realized that at the very beginning, some of mine were just like off to nowhere rather than being like little contained units. I clearly got confused the first time I was kind of separating out my elongated stitches, and I ended up having to unpick back to my lifeline and re-stitch it. And it now looks actually so much neater. Every time I was starting over, I was realizing that it was actually looking better and better, because I'm not that experienced of a knitter. I'm ambitious as anything, because I'm somebody who, same with my sewing, I just want to make something that I'm excited about. And if I'm not very good at it, I'm okay with just redoing it. I don't mind. I wouldn't say that it's not disappointing, but I know that every time I'm doing it, I'm getting more knowledge and more skills. And so it ends up being a better version. And I feel like now that I've managed to get these hexagons, a row of the hexagons finished, I much more understand how it works, and I feel more confident going forward. I did put another lifeline stitch in because I'm not taking any chances, because there's a very good chance I'm going to screw something up after this point, and at least then I can rip back to here. But I feel really happy with how it's going. It's really exciting, but it is something that I can only work on when I'm super focused, especially the parts where I'm adding my loops for elongated stitches and separating them out, which is how you create these hexagons. And I can focus on that only. I didn't have anything then to do when I was just hanging out and like watching TV or hanging out and watching YouTube videos. And so I decided that I needed another project, and I decided to jump on the Stripe Hype sweater bandwagon. So the Stripe Hype sweater is by Kotova Kika, and I have seen various versions around, but really the one that just stole my heart and made me really want to make it is Sarah of Sarah Sewed. She made a version recently that looked absolutely beautiful. I really love the color she chose. I really love that you can personalize this with the colors and pick the colors that you normally wear often, so that way you can mix and match within your own wardrobe, which I think is really cool. She said that it's a really easy and satisfying sweater to put together. I also saw that Erin of Erin Sews is in the process of making her Stripe Hype sweater, so I was definitely excited to join in on that. And that's what is inside my project bag. So this is where I have got to. I've got up to part of the body, both the front and the back. They've been joined together. Now this is meant to be like a relaxed drop sleeve thing, which, I mean, I know that it will be. It's hard to demonstrate, but it's going to go be a drop sleeve, and then the stripes continue down from there. Obviously, you'll be seeing pictures of what this looks like in the end. It is meant to be a relaxed fit. I obviously still have this on the needles, so it's not as relaxed as it's going to be. I did swatch this one as well, and this one, the swatch came out absolutely like spot on perfect, which I was really happy about. And so I knew I could just get on with it. I did have a thing though with the colors. So this yarn, it is the Yarn Smith's merino. So this is the Wool Warehouse, their own yarn that they have made, and it is really inexpensive. For merino wool, it is extremely reasonably priced, and I wanted to use merino because I know a lot of people say, again, that it's better if you have like more sensitive skin for a lot of wools. It's not scratchy, it's really soft, and the price point really did draw me in, and I felt like, what's the difference? I'm sure there's a difference that I just don't know about. I will say that the colors though were very, I would say, inaccurate. And I know that it's difficult when you're looking at colors on a phone, on a computer, they can vary. They're never going to be 100% accurate. But the problem was I wanted to pick colors that went together, and I ended up with colors that looked so different that I really didn't want to use them. Let me grab the ones I ended up rejecting. So I'm going to show up a picture of what I had picked out that I thought were going to be my 5 colors that I was going to use, and also like the orientation of the colors. And this is the purple that came, and I think honestly the screen, that's looking accurate. Like that is what it looks like, which does not look like that picture. That is not a purple that I would have chosen. And then also this like petrol-y color, teal color, is really, they're both just very bright. Like they're a lot brighter and bolder and punchier than I wanted. And they're just not the kinds of colors that are in my wardrobe. I wanted to pick colors that coordinate well. Now, because I got 2 balls of these yarn and they're only 2 pounds each, I decided to just keep those ones and order some more in another color that I was hoping that would be closer to my vision. At the very least, I could then choose to kind of, you know, mix and match with them or pick the better option out of the 2. And I ended up a lot happier with this petrol blue color. So this was the original that I got. This is more the kind of color that I was looking for. And then this purple, again, it's not the same like boldness. It's a little bit more muted, which is more what I wanted. So the other colors I will say were pretty good. And the colors that I have on the whole now, I do really like. I'm just going to try and balance them if it's not too much of a bad idea. It probably is. I think these all work quite well together. And the base color, that was one place where I messed up, and I actually ordered the wrong number because I was looking at so many different colors and I got confused when I was ordering. And I ended up ordering this one, which is much more, I would say, like brown notes, beigey than I really wanted. I wanted it to be a softer color, and I ended up sending back and getting the one that was more what I wanted, which is oatmeal. So that's more the color that I was hoping for as my background. Now, I will say they do, I was not sure if they would accept returns for yarn. They absolutely do. And so in the end, I'm happy with everything that I got. I do have these really bright colors that I will have to find another use for. It is nice yarn. I do like working with it. It does feel really soft and spongy in my hands. Maybe the only thing I will say, because like I said, I don't really know what differentiates a more expensive yarn from a less expensive yarn, but there are some like bits. I'm trying to find like here, like I've got this little floofy bit that sticks out. I don't know if you can see it. I think you can probably see it a little bit. And I get these occasionally and they're not really part of the yarn, and I can kind of like trim them or pull them off. But I don't know, that's not a big deal to me for sure. And I do think this is coming together well. I think it is coming together really quickly because when you're making this, you're doing, you know, like a stripe at a time, and it's 8 rows of the stripe. I feel like you are achieving something quite frequently as you're making it. So every time you're kind of switching colors, it's like, oh, good, I finished that bit. Now I can do the next color. And that happens relatively often and quickly. And so you feel like you're getting little wins, little celebrations so often that you then want to start the next color. You want to start the next row. And I am looking forward to seeing how this all comes together in the end. I did end up playing around with the colors on this because initially I was going with the pink on top, and then I went on to the blue and I knitted that on the back, which is the first section that you do. And then I was knitting it on the front, and I was starting to feel like the pink and the blue with the white, the cream stripe, it was starting to look a little bit too patriotic for me, a little bit too red, white, and blue, which like, I have no problem with making a red, white, and blue sweater, and I think it would be fun to have that at some point, but that was not the intention for this. And my husband looked at it and he made the same comment, And I felt like, okay, well, if he's saying that and I already had that feeling, you know, it kind of just made me feel like clearly this is something that I need to think about. Now, obviously, it's going to be lots of colors on there, so I'm sure it wouldn't have really mattered, but I felt like, well, if I'm wearing it, you're just seeing like that portion. Is that just going to be what you see and what it looks like? So I ended up unpicking the blue and putting the purple on instead. I mean, either are pretty, honestly, but I do feel like it's looking really nice and I'm enjoying the process of knitting that one. I will be adding a neckband and sleeves, obviously, a bit later as well. I do also have a few things for my 25 for 2025 that I have been working on. None of them are complete, but there has been progress. And one of them is another crafty thing I've been working on, which is this punch needle project. Now, I wanted to create my own punch needle design, and I thought it would be fun to make something that was inspired by Paul Klee's artwork. I am a big Klee fan. He has lots of types of paintings that he does, but one of the paintings that he does, or style of paintings that he does that I like, are kind of like a cityscape, and they look a bit like if you were looking at a city from like a slightly overhead angle where you can see like the shapes of the buildings, but also that, you know, you've got skyscrapers and you've got little like plots of land. He does some that are fields, some that are cities. I think those are really interesting and cool. They're very like geometric, and I thought it would be fun to do something using that as an inspiration. So to put this together, I just drew with some pen on this punch needle fabric. Now, I have actually done punch needle cushion before, which is next to me on the couch. I'll pop a picture in of what that looks like. So this is going to end up being the same size because I used the same dimensions. I already have the cushion to put it into, but this has actually been a little bit harder on my wrist, and so I haven't been able to do as much in one go, which is why it's just taking a little bit longer. But it's been a fun one to chip away at, and I think it would be really fun. I'm using up a lot of scrap yarn from punch needle projects I've made in the past, and I'm sure end up going into the rest of my yarn stash to finish it up, but I think it'll be really cool when I finish it off, and it is on my list. I've also been working on figuring out my ideal chai latte recipe. I'm not there yet, but I'm close, guys. I think it's gonna happen in November. It's definitely the season for it. I really love chai, and I figured out my favorite recipe for making chai last year, but I also like a chai latte. They are different drinks. So the latte has a frothy milk element, and I do actually have pretty different preferences as far as sweetness and flavor for a chai latte. And so it's been fun to experiment a little bit, and like I said, I'm hoping to get there. I'm not far off. I also had wanted to read at least 25 books this year, and I've been making some headway on it. I have 2 books that I finished in the months of September and October. The first one was actually recommended by one of you guys, so thank you for the recommendation. It was called The Carpool Detectives by Chuck Hogan. Now, this book, it is based on a true story. It's not usually the kind of thing that I read, but I thought it'd be fun to branch out a little bit. It's a true crime story based on a story where these 4 women decided to investigate a cold case where 2 people had been suspected as murdered, and they wanted to try and get to the bottom of it. And this all happened during the pandemic 2020, where everyone was in lockdown. This was in the US and California. And it was interesting to see how, like, a civilian, a regular person not working in law enforcement, would still be able to like get information and piece things together. It was a very fun read. I wouldn't say the writing was amazing. It was fine. It was okay, but it was more about the story, and I think it was a fun one definitely to have read. I also finished Margaret Atwood's Old Babes in the Wood. This is short story collection by Margaret Atwood. I read a lot of her stuff. I always enjoy her writing. And what was interesting about this one that I enjoyed about it was a lot of it was writing about and from the perspective of older people. So people, you know, in the later stages of life, they've retired, they're getting older, health problems, people passing away around them. And I think that's that's an area that I feel like is less written about. I feel like most stories have like an exciting young protagonist in like, you know, a stage of their life where, you know, there's like relationships forming and big life changes. I don't feel like there's enough focus on us as we get older. And I really appreciate her writing about that stuff. And as always, I think she does a really good job of that. I definitely teared up reading some of the things that I was reading. It was a really enjoyable short story book, and it was one that I picked up while I was in Chicago, so it was nice to be able to read it. And I have 2 books that I have not finished, and they are on the chunky side, which is why I haven't managed to finish them. The first one that I started reading has ended up on the side. This is Robert Bolaño's The Savage Detectives, and I will talk to you guys about this when I finish it. I'm about, well, a little over halfway through, so I still have quite a bit of a way to go with this one. And what ended up happening with this is this book has a lot of other literary references, so it mentions other books and authors, and it made me really intrigued to read another book. And so I looked to see if it was in the local library. It was like taken out by other people, so I thought, oh well, maybe it's a popular book, even though it's an older book. I'll put a hold on it so that way when it becomes available I can get it. And of course when it came, it then had to take priority because it's a library book and it's not going to be available, or I'm not going to be able to take it out for that long at a time. And that is Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain. I'm very close to finishing this one, so I'm, you know, most of the way there, but I haven't quite finished it. So I'm going to tell you guys about this when I finish it in November. But I have been really enjoying it for sure. I am somebody who I will often have multiple books on the go, depending on my mood or what I'm, you know, what I'm doing. Like at bedtime, I have certain things I'm more inclined to read. So I am someone who isn't the best at sticking to one. So the fact that I've got multiple books partway finished is pretty typical. But for sure, I should be finishing the Thomas Mann one. We'll see if I manage to get through the Roberto Bolaño one in November, but I'll update you guys next month. One of my other goals this year was to complete a jigsaw puzzle a month, and that has not been a problem. That is definitely a low bar, the way things have been. I have been really enjoying working on jigsaw puzzles with my husband. It's something that he and I have been doing together, and we've been starting to work through the works of Miles Davis, and we both are Miles Davis fans, but really only have music of his from a particular era. So it's been interesting to hear from the beginning, and we're working our way through into the 70s. I will say it's not all my cup of tea, but largely I've really been enjoying it. It's been a nice accompaniment to our puzzling. And so we did end up completing 3 jigsaw puzzles in September and 3 more in October. I will say I wasn't sure if I was going to get any of them done in September because for a while I wasn't able to kind of lean forward and sit and work on a jigsaw puzzle. And by the time I felt able to do so, it was another one of those things kind of like the sewing where I felt like this is a little achievement that I can kind of tick and say, oh, I've gotten to this point. I've been able to do some jigsaw puzzling, which means I'm getting better, which is a really positive thing. But the 3 that we did in September, I've got them on my phone because I'm not going to remember all these ones. We did a Muppets jigsaw puzzle, which is an old favorite. We've done that one before. We're Muppets fans. I love the Muppets. They're very fun, and being able to see them slowly form and take shape as you're doing a jigsaw puzzle is really enjoyable. It's a good amount of like difficulty with like the fireworks in the sky is quite a challenge, but also some of the Muppets their clothing can look similar, their fur can look similar. It was a fun one, and that's one that we enjoy going back to now and then. We also did a Kandinsky jigsaw puzzle that I think I actually shared with you guys because I did it earlier this year. It was the first time I'd done it earlier this year, but I enjoyed it so much I suggested to him that we do this one together. I like Kandinsky, but he's not my favorite painter, but I do think his paintings work really well as jigsaw puzzles. And we worked on that one, really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's just a fun jigsaw puzzle because you have these little sections of color, little areas of the painting that you can work on individually and see it come together. I did actually do a Klee jigsaw puzzle with him as well that I forgot to mention to you guys. I feel like that was maybe, I don't know if that was like July or August. And that one is one of my favorites for sure. And it's the same kind of style that I was talking about that I'm using for the punch needle. That was a really fun one to work on. I think with both of these, when you're working with paintings, you'll often have the same color in different areas of the puzzle. So you might think you're working on one bit and you find out you're actually working on another, which is quite fun and satisfying. And I will say that all these jigsaw puzzles have very distinctive pieces. The Kandinsky one, even though there's a fair amount of like blank space, you know when the pieces fit and when they don't, which makes a huge difference when it's more of a challenging one. We also bought a couple of jigsaw puzzles to work on together because I knew we were going to be off. It's something we could be doing while I was off. And we bought one that's the 1980s style. So it's basically like images of things from the 1980s. It was just a fun, colorful one to work on. It was pretty quick to put together, but we enjoyed it. And then in October, we did another Kandinsky one because we enjoyed the first one so much and we knew that we would enjoy this one, and it was really fun again to put together. And it's nice to have some in your collection that you know that you're going to enjoy whenever you're in the mood to do one. And I know that that's one that I'll go back to. We decided after that we wanted a bit of a challenge because we were, as you can tell, really flying through the jigsaw puzzles pretty quickly. And so we decided to do an old one that I got years ago it's calling itself a challenge jigsaw puzzle because it is a challenge. And it is a Mario jigsaw puzzle with a ton of Marios on there that all look virtually the same. It was interesting when you're working on a different style of jigsaw puzzle that you end up trying to figure out different bits to separate the Marios and see what's different. It's a very different way of puzzling, and it was a much slower process, but very satisfying when we finally got it to put together. And finally, at the end of October, we thought it seemed appropriate to pull out my Edward Gorey jigsaw puzzle. Edward Gorey is very fun and maybe not fun to everybody. There's a lot of humor in Edward Gorey stuff, but it is definitely very dark and gothic, and it seemed right for Spooktober, end of October time. It's not fully, but there was a skeleton and there was a demon in there, so it seemed like the right kind of time to do it. Because the colors on this is quite muted, it was more challenging in ways, but again, it was a nice one to put together, good quality jigsaw puzzle. I feel like I'm definitely finding some favorite jigsaw puzzle companies, and I'm finding the ones that I just really don't want to buy anymore from, and all the ones I've mentioned were all definitely good ones. I feel like I do want to also just touch on what I've been alluding to, the health stuff that's been going on, why I haven't been around for the last couple of months. I ended up with an abscess in my groin area, basically an infection right where I sit down, a very uncomfortable place. And on the 11th of September, I ended up having to have emergency surgery, which has left me with a very big wound that has taken a very long time to heal. I am definitely very happy and impressed with the NHS, with my body's ability to heal, and I am really happy about the progress that I've made. I'm not 100% back to where I was before, but I'm definitely the majority of the way there and feeling much, much better. And I am excited to be making more videos for you guys back here on YouTube. I have so many video ideas and I don't know how I'm gonna possibly make them all. I do want to make a fall sewing plans video, even though we're pretty far into the fall. I mean, we're not technically, but it's like felt like we're a good way into the fall. I do also have a winter sewing plans video that I'm going to be making for you guys in like a couple of months, which again, it feels like a little bit too soon, but I would have ideally put this video out a month ago, possibly even longer ago, but life. So I am excited to make that one, and also my boot shaper video. I got tons of ideas, like I said, and I hope that you guys are going to be sticking around. I hope it's good to see me back. I am really interested to hear what you guys have been up to over the last couple of months. I'm hoping there's been some more positive stuff going on with all of you. I want to know about your sewing, your crafting, generally what's been going on in life, because I feel like I haven't been able to talk to you guys, and I really enjoy interacting with all of you guys in the comments, and I feel like I'm missing out on what all of you guys have been doing as well. If you did enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more of my videos, make sure you are subscribed to my channel, and I'll see you guys very soon. Bye!